For this project, I decided to learn more about India. Last summer, I had the opportunity to nanny for an Indian family for a few weeks. Not only did I get to enjoy spending time with an absolutely adorable 1-year-old, I also had the chance to encounter some fascinating Indian culture while I was in their home. Since this connection of mine is back in Illinois, I was in need of someone to interview. Luckily, Dr. Peter was able to connect me with one of her master's students, who I will soon introduce in an upcoming slide. First, I would like to revisit some background information that I gained from last week's reading and additional research. India has a population of 1.2 billion, making it the second most populous country behind China. However, it is predicted that by 2025, India is expected to surpass China. It is estimated that there are 2,000 different ethnic groups. Additionally, in the reading, it claims that 18 officially recognized languages are present. But Parul, my interviewee, told me 22. India has a caste system which divides Hindus into rigid hierarchical groups based on their karma, or work, and dharma, which is the Hindi word for religion, but for us it means duty. The original caste system divides individuals into 4 main groups, and I'm sorry, but I will butcher these names: the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, with many believing that the groups originated from Brahma, the Hindu god of creation. At the top of the hierarchy were the Brahmins, with the Shudras being at the bottom of the heap. However, these main castes were further divided into about 3,000 castes and 25,000 subcastes, each based on their specific occupation. Also, outside of this Hindu caste system were the Dalits, or the untouchables. These individuals are not even viewed as humans. This system grants many privileges to those who are members of the higher-ranking castes, while limiting opportunities for those who are lower-ranked. With that being said, a huge problem that faces India is the amount of poverty that surrounds this country. 700 million people live on less than $2 a day. These extreme numbers impact people who live in India on the daily, playing a role in almost every aspect of their lives. Now, I would like to move on to what I have learned from this project. I had the pleasure of talking with Parul Sood, a lecturer at the Applied English Center here at the University of Kansas. Parul grew up in New Delhi, India, and lived there for 25 years. She is fluent in both Hindi and English, and can also understand but not speak Punjabi. She came to the U.S. in 2009 and got married and furthered her education at KU. She lives in Lenexa, Kansas, and has only ever lived in Kansas upon moving to the U.S. She has a daughter who is currently in 1st grade, and every summer, Parul travels back to India to visit her family and provide her daughter with the opportunity to experience India firsthand. One of the first questions I asked Parul was, what is one word you would use to describe the school system in India? To that, she used the word inequitable. I then essentially repeated that same question, but instead tweaked it to, what is one word you would use to describe the school system in the U.S.? She responded by saying fair, a word completely different from the first. In India, as mentioned before, success stems from what family you are born into and what caste system you belong to, as this comes with money. If you have money in India, you have power. Money grants individuals with better opportunities and more exposure and experiences. One individual could belong to a higher caste system and have unlimited access to traveling and learning, allowing them to produce perfect English and attend the best schools. However, another individual of a lower caste with not as many opportunities may not even know how to read or write. In America, this is not the case. It does not matter what family you come from or what religion you practice. The chance to receive an education is still available, and any citizen has the chance to accomplish anything. This supports the American dream. This led us to dive into a deeper discussion regarding the similarities and differences that these two school systems face. Peru mentioned that there are many differences and few similarities. I would like to first talk about the similarities. To start, both U.S. and Indian schools follow a syllabus and have teachers who are educated and able to teach. On top of that, public and private schools are offered in both countries, although in India, their public schools are referred to as government schools, and their private schools are known as public schools, something I found to be very confusing. Lastly, both countries, by law, are required to offer free education up until elementary school, even though the quality of education may differ in India, and in some cases, this law may not even be followed. Next, I will be switching gears and talking about the differences between these countries. And be warned, there are a lot. The first difference that Parul discussed was the classroom ratio size. She mentioned that the classes that she personally teaches are much smaller than those she's encountered in India. She then compared her daughter's first grade class size to what she experienced when she was in first grade. Her daughter's class has roughly 20 students taught by one teacher. However, her first grade class was nearly doubled in size, with about 40 students to that one teacher. She mentioned that she has noticed that the U.S. allows for students to build upon their overall personalities by focusing on the arts, sports, and pursuing hobbies, while in India, those are simply labeled as extracurriculars. Extracurriculars are viewed as extra, or something you can do if you have time and if your grades are good enough. The main focuses in Indian schools are aimed towards math and science. If you are not good at these subjects, you are viewed as dumb, and as a result, you must work harder, removing the chance to enjoy said extracurriculars. This leads to the conclusion that the standard of education in India is higher. With the pressure to do well in these specific courses, children in India spend most of their time studying so that they can compete alongside their classmates. Parul views the U.S. as being more flexible, giving the example that in the U.S., it is okay to fail, as you will have the chance to try again, and teachers and family will be there to support you. India does not accept failure, especially in school, as it brings shame to the family. A student in India may have many other strengths outside of math and science, but those just do not matter. Another difference is the fact that analysis and application in learning is missing in Indian schools. Schools in the U.S. create opportunities for students to apply what they are learning to real-life situations, while Indian schools do not. Instead, students learn from the textbook, they then memorize what they are required to know, and then they take the test. No learning is happening, but rather memorization. Lastly, the infrastructures in both schools are much different. U.S. schools have access to many resources, the facility is typically well maintained, libraries are available, and technology is provided. Some Indian schools do not even have drinkable water. However, improvements have been made in more recent years. Parul wanted me to mention that her experiences are from 20 years ago, so everything that she is sharing and that I am repeating, although true, things most likely have been updated since then. Another question I thought would be important to ask was, do you believe Americanization is helping or harming your country? As we know from class, many countries are adopting multiple aspects of the American culture and steering away from their own country's traditions. India specifically has been on this path to becoming more Americanized since the 90s. The people of India are spending their time watching American TV and movies, copying clothing trends, placing importance on American brands, and focusing on the English language more. Now, even though the use of English is nothing new to them, how they are speaking has changed greatly. India was ruled by the British, meaning that all forms of English taught in schools translated to British English. For example, in America, we tend to say dude, but in India, they were originally taught to say chap. This sudden change in importance all comes from the idea that one can be seen as cool if they latch onto American ways. Sounding, looking, and acting like an American also serves as a status symbol and a way for people to show off money, a luxury most do not have. Parul hates the fact that many want to abandon what is unique to Indian culture and completely change their lifestyles. She acknowledges that some change is good, but does not support a full-on American takeover. This following slide corresponds with the question, what would you say are your country's weaknesses? For India, Parul's answers are poverty and lack of national pride. As I have briefly mentioned, poverty is quite prevalent in India. This comes from corruption. Every system is corrupt in India, whether that is education, politics, or anything really. People take bribes, which goes hand in hand with the idea that if you have money, you can get away with whatever you want. Corruption leads to poverty, which then leads to the gap between the rich and poor, highlighting uneven social stratification. In reference to India's lack of national character, many do not have any pride in being an Indian, as that is not focused on in school or modeled by peers. In America, however, everyone is so proud to be an American. Parents will integrate those feelings of pride into their children from the start, and schools will highly stress the importance of love for their country. Parul continued by describing mostly everyone in India as selfish, mentioning that people will do anything to get themselves and their families ahead of the rest, rather than thinking of their nation as a whole. Some even have an ultimate goal of leaving India, as large amounts just simply hate this country. Parul's concluding thoughts included how different the emphasis of education in India versus the US is, the beauty of the rich culture that still can be found in India, and the idea that members of India ultimately live simpler lives, something that is rarely found in America. Although many terrible things surround India, many are still able to call it home and create a wonderful life for themselves. Thank you.